Welcome to the CEO Shift Show. This is a space where we talk about building businesses that actually support your life, not ones that quietly depend on you for everything. So if you're a service-based CEO who's capable, respected, and deeply invested in your work, but feels like the business is heavier than it should be at this stage, you're exactly where you need to be. Before we get into today's episode, let me ask you to do something really simple, but super important. If this show has ever helped you slow down, see your business differently, please like the episode, share it with another business owner, and subscribe to the show. That's how this movement grows. All right. Let's talk about pricing. I want to talk to you about what happens inside when your pricing comes up. That tightening in the chest, that internal calculation you do based on who's sitting across from you. I know you do it. That subtle shift in energy when someone pauses after you say the number. Here's the thing. Most people don't say out loud. If their pricing feels heavy, it's not because you're bad at business. And it's not because you need more confidence. It's usually because you're trying to lead a business that hasn't been fully structured yet. And pricing is where that shows up first. Most advice around pricing points you in the wrong direction. So it tells you to strengthen the mindset, own the number, stop caring what the client thinks. But confidence isn't the only thing that holds pricing together. Structure does too. And when you don't know and understand clearly what the business requires to operate, grow, and pay you properly, pricing can become emotional. Pricing turns leadership reactive. So if you've ever found yourself adjusting quotes based on tone, urgency, or the fear of losing work, don't take it as a personal failure. It's only a sequencing problem. You're trying to price before your architecture is in place. And here's the shift I want you to spend a little bit more time on, because this is where most capable business owners misunderstand what's actually happening. Price doesn't feel heavy because you're unsure of your value. It feels heavy because pricing is one of the few moments where everything unbuilt in the business shows up all at once. When you say your number out loud, you're not just naming a price. You're subconsciously asking a stack of unanswered questions to actually hold steady. Questions like, is this enough to cover what we really spend? Is this enough to pay me? Is this enough to grow without having to scramble later? Is this enough to hire without pressure? And is this enough if something goes sideways? And when you don't have a clear answer to those specific questions, your nervous system steps in because it wants to protect you. And that's when pricing becomes emotional. So let's be clear that this is not about confidence. This is about the support that you need to have in place in order to make proper decisions about your business. As an operator, you're used to making decisions by feel, or by experience, by instinct, by gut. And that worked until the business reaches a size where instinct is no longer enough. The CEO role requires something different. It requires decisions that are supported by the structure, not the personality. This is why sequencing matters so much. Most business owners try to price first, and then they reverse engineer the business to try and make the numbers work. So that actually puts you in a constant state of reaction. The CEO shift is reversing that order. You no longer start with, what will the market tolerate? You start with, what does this business actually require to function well and sustainably at the next level? And that includes understanding your real overhead, not your optimistic overhead, but your real overhead. That owner's compensation that not only supports you and your family, but next steps actually reflects leadership. We're not looking for leftover money. We're looking to identify growth costs that are planned, not hoped for. And realize that capacity limits are respected, not just pushed through. And when those elements are clear, pricing stops feeling like a personal gamble. Because now you're not defining a number, you're communicating a decision. CEOs present structure. This is also where a lot of people end up tripping themselves up. They think becoming more confident will solve the pricing discomfort. But confidence without the structure creates arrogance and sometimes burnout, and neither is sustainable. Structure creates calm. Calm is what allows you to pause instead of react, to say no without spiraling, to hold your number without explanation. It also allows you to walk away from misalignment and to be able to work without panic. That's the real shift. Pricing then becomes lighter, not because you toughened up, but because the business underneath you can finally hold the decision. Once that happens, leadership starts to feel very different. I'm not about to tell you a success story, and I'm not going to walk you through someone else's business so that you can compare yourself or feel behind. That's not what case studies are here for. In this show, case studies exist for one reason only, and that's to show you how a decision changes when structure is present. As I share this next example, I want you to listen for how the decision was made, not the outcome, not the numbers, not the personality of the people involved. I want you to recognize a moment where the leadership shifted from reaction to design. Because once you see that shift clearly, you can start to spot where it needs to happen in your own business. Structure replaced emotion. And notice what happens when. So here's the situation. This was a project-based service business. 2 owners, strong demand, good reputation. And on paper, nothing was wrong. But pricing felt heavy, not because they were charging too much, but because every pricing decision was carrying an unanswered responsibility. Every quote quietly held a question like, if we land this, will it actually cover everything? If we don't land it, are we in trouble? If we hire next, will this still work? If something goes wrong, can the business actually absorb it? So those questions weren't being answered anywhere in the business. So pricing became the place where all of that uncertainty landed. So here's the decision point. They needed to raise pricing slightly to support margin and stability. But every time they talked about it, the conversation drifted into fear. What if the clients push back? What if we lose momentum? What if we're wrong? We changed the sequence. We made one decision, No pricing conversations until the business could explain itself. So instead of adjusting the numbers, we built a structure that makes pricing intelligible. We utilized real annual overhead. We utilized real owner compensation in a leadership role. We utilized growth costs that were coming, whether we planned for them or not. And we understood capacity limits that were already being felt. Once those elements became visible, the pricing decision changed, even before the numbers did. The internal question stopped being, can we charge this? And became, what does the business require to operate properly and grow without stress? It's a fundamentally different decision. And at that point, pricing stopped being a risk. And it became a reflection, not of the ego, not of the confidence, but it became a reflection of design. No one had to rehearse scripts, and no one had to own the number. The decisions held because the structure underneath it could actually carry the weight. That's what I want you to hear. When pricing becomes calm and systemized, it's not because you got braver. It's because the business stopped asking you to guess. When pricing becomes calm and consistent, it's almost never because someone found better words or better, because a few very specific things are now doing the work for the CEO instead of being carried by the CEO. And so here's what that looks like in practice. First of all, we had annual clarity. We didn't work with a lease forecast, but we founded it in a grounded understanding of what the business actually costs to operate. And when you know your real overhead, including leadership compensation and growth costs, pricing stops floating, and now it can actually anchor. Second is role clarity. This is really subtle, but it's just as important. When you're still operating as the emotional buffer between uncertainty and the business, your job is no longer to absorb pressure, is to design decisions that don't require the constant absorption. That changes how pricing is held. Third, pricing tied to your reality, not to compensation or what feels safe, but to what allows the business to function without borrowing energy from you. And this is where many people get really uncomfortable, because it asks you to trust structure more than instinct. And fourth, it requires a sales process that filters instead of convinces. When pricing feels heavy, it's often because you're quoting people who were never meant to say yes. A clean sales process does one thing exceptionally well. It protects pricing from misalignment. And finally, let's talk about pipeline visibility. When you can see what's coming, not guessing, your nervous system actually settles. You stop making pricing decisions as if each one is the last opportunity you're ever going to have. So none of us is flashy, none of it's sexy, but together, these elements remove pricing from the emotional centers and places it where it belongs, inside a system. And once pricing lives inside a system, leadership now changes. But here's where we need to slow this down even more. Because at this point, a lot of people are nodding along, and they go right back to trying to muscle through the next decision. So let me name what's really happening underneath all of this. Pricing is just the surface. It's an expression of something deeper. It's one of the few moments where you can feel instantly whether your business is functioning as a tool or whether it's still fused to you. And this is where the CEO shift becomes more than mechanics. It becomes identity. So we're going to slow down the conversation enough to hear this next part. Pricing is rarely the real issue. It's just one of the first places you can feel whether your business is supporting you or quietly leaning on you for stability. You become the shock absorber. You absorb uncertainty, risk, emotional reactions from clients, from the team, from the bank account. And over time, it starts to feel like pressure because the business hasn't been designed to stand on its own yet. This is why I talk so often about your business as a tool. A tool should support your life, create leverage, hold weight without constant supervision. It should not require you to emotionally stabilize it every time a decision comes up. When you have structure, that creates separation. And separation is what allows you to lead without carrying everything in your body. And this is the next shift we're going to make here. And that's from reaction to design. That's how businesses stop feeling like pressure and start functioning like the asset. Now, please don't listen to this and immediately start trying to fix things. Instead, I want you to notice, because awareness always comes before the architecture. Here's your CEO challenge this week. No spreadsheets yet, no tactics yet, just honesty. Ask yourself, do I have a real annual budget, or is it a hopeful one? Is my pricing tied to reality or to reaction? Do I have a sales process I trust, or do I convince as I go? Can I see my pipeline, or am I guessing and bracing? If any of those feel fuzzy, that's information. And the information is what CEOs use to design systems. So don't try to be more confident this week. Try to be more supported. It's not about doing more. It's about removing the need for you to carry what the business should be carrying for itself. And that's the work. If this episode helped you slow down and see your business differently, please like it and share with another CEO who might actually need this conversation. And subscribe to the CEO Shift Show. That's how this movement grows, one clear decision at a time. From there, if you want structured systems that you can implement yourself, check out the Tool Vault, available at the scalablecEOacademy.com. And if you want hands-on support, coaching, or done-for-you builds, you can also book a call at carolsurbey.com. So lead from clarity, design before reaction, and I'll see you next week on the CEO Shift Show.